Hello there. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are. We're live from our studios here in Kokomlimle on digital address GA0992539. Our top stories this hour. Supreme Court finally rules for the Electoral Commission to proceed with compilation of new register in accordance with CI 126, which excludes voters' ID card, the existing voters' ID card and birth certificate. We have details from the court and what is running through your mind. Let's have a conversation. Also coming up, authorities hint Ghana's borders may reopen soon as ECOWAS leaders agree on a deal. We'll tell you what we know. And one person killed as clashes ensue between illegal miners and some military officials protecting a mining concession. We'll have details coming up shortly. Also, what was your experience last night as a tremor rocked through towns? This afternoon, we hear from disaster experts. We're live on your digital television, also on DSTV 421, Go TV 144. We stream live on YouTube. You can watch us there. Send your thoughts to us on our social media platforms. My name is Gifty Andopia. This is The Pulse. Please be my guest. Welcome to the details of those stories now. Illegal miners have clashed with police and military in Kolongo after a similar clash led to the death of one of the miners in Patricia last night. The firing of gunshots, burning of tires and blocking of roads characterized today's clash. Watch this.
Man's Bianco, baby, mining will be as baby, mining will be as I'm so on. My hand say, yes, and come my youth no do my I'm at attaching stronghold. And so mobile and not watch that and no watch that. I wear nada. Man's one of your property, I say your property. I don't know to the point. And some of you family, I didn't say a bassa. I was saying to me, I do my son yet. Our hands say, Musume do be any Galam Sun, yeah, and another bar with Tomukena. Until you to a bad man, and you are 2 man. I was so who says to many do my and it's there. Tiziano, you are going to cry, and I will see you. So just one of move to me and your mamma. And that's what some can answer your man. And Tiziano, only my years and you'll be at it. I just had the 2020 years, and your mom is here from my country. I saw my account. It's Tiziano, as one black, one man in Piano. I'm so young, I say, Allah on your bad time.
So that's some of the aggrieved illegal miners there, talking to Adom FM's correspondent Isaac Amwako, who is joining me on Zoom. Let me try and capture what they said in that interaction. Essentially, they're saying that no mining is done without illegal mining, they say without galamsey, and they say that they have been lied to by the companies that operate there, that operates legal mining in that area. They allege that some people have been killed. They say yesterday one person was killed, and they say that they have no other jobs there but to do illegal mining, and so they're calling for jobs. They say that as long as the legal mining companies are working or operating in their neighborhood, in their communities, they will also work, which is they will also do their illegal mining. And they say if they are not allowed to do so, they will not allow election campaigns to go on in their community. They are asking also, some of them were asking also for small-scale mining concessions to them, and they are demanding that the regional minister and the MCA comes to speak to them, or else they're threatening that they wouldn't mind putting their lives on the line, because they believe that the presence of the military and the police officers there is sanctioned by these authorities. Let's get to speak to Adom FM's correspondent Isaac Amwako. Isaac, thank you for your time. First of all, which concession are they fighting over?
Good afternoon.
Right.
We are fighting with Operation Vanguard and the military men at Petrensa.
They are talking about a particular company whose concession they say they need to do their own sort of illegal mining on. Which company are we referring to?
The company is our mines.
Our mines.
Yeah. Okay.
So tell us exactly what happened that led to the death of one person. At least, what are the eyewitnesses telling you?
The problem started yesterday at Navy, where one person was shot dead. The thing is, the police, the Operation Vanguard, and then the military, the militaries went to the site to stop the galaxies. So they started the youth angry with them, making shouting between the military and the Operation Vanguard, where they started burning ties, and then there's some other items. So the military also got angry. They according to the sources, they started throwing stones with the military and then Operation Vanguard, where them two also fire guns to the youths.
So that's how this happened. Well, we've been talking to the police. Let's hear the police side of the story.
There was a firing, and one of the mostly miners got injured. He was rushed to first-class hospital and later on died at the hospital. So that brought about serious confrontation between small-scale miners and mining security. So police got the information and proceeded to the scene to calm down situations. We were able to do that this morning. As early as 5 o'clock, we were on the ground to ensure that because we had information that the small-scale miners intend to converge and go and revenge the death of their colleague. We monitored them, showed them, and make sure that nothing untoward happened. They proceeded to Retensa this morning, and there was another confrontation between them and the mining security and the military on one side, and them also on the other. About 4 motorbikes got damaged, and 2 pickups were also damaged. Information written indicates that there was an attack on 2 military officers who were guarding and a generator of the mining company. Has it not been the speedy intervention of the police, it would have been a disaster. We were able to calm down the situation to over there. From there, we moved to the scene where the incident happened. Then we were told that the small-scale mining guys have also converged here. We decided to come here to talk to them, to assure them of investigation having commenced. We were almost done with talking to them, then the military groups emerged. In fact, before I say Jack, I was just firing. I was in between firing. While the guys were also throwing stones at the military was also firing. But I was not hit anyway, myself and my men. I don't know whether somebody was hit in the course, but for now, what happened. As to what triggered the firing a moment ago, I can't tell, but according to the military, they were throwing stones at them, and then they also start firing in the air. We were able to calm down situations. We talked to the military in charge, and then we also talked to the mining guys, and then the situation is now calm. We will continue monitoring the ground to ensure that the situation doesn't escalate. If there's a need to call in contact with the community, we will do that.
And that's a developing story that we'll keep our eyes on to update you on. We know at this point that 1 person has been killed. We get more clarification from the military command and the police administration on the back of it. Now, the Ministries of Trade, Employment and Labour Relations are developing a monitoring mechanism to enforce the adherence of safety protocols at workplaces. This follows revelations by the Director General of the Ghana Health Service, Dr. Patrick Abuaje, that workplaces are becoming the breeding grounds for infections in recent times. Ghana's COVID-19 cases stand at 15,472 and 95 people have been killed. Let's take a look at the case count as well as the regional breakdown.
Recorded 15,472 cumulative cases. That is from the first day, the number of people who have ever tested positive. Out of this, 9,146 has come from enhanced contact tracing, which is either for now we are looking more at risk screening, among others. That is also leading to some of the institutional data we are getting, and then some of the testing of contacts. 6,327 has also come from general surveillance. That is for those who present with symptoms that suggest that they may be positive. Of this 15,000, 11,433 have recovered and are home or at their workplaces. Currently, we have about 22 people who are severe, 6 are critical. We recorded 95 deaths, and so the total number of active cases, which I keep saying the most important number, the people that we need to deal with, those who are sick, those who are waiting, who are either asymptomatic and at home and waiting to recover, stands at 3,947 cases. We had a total new cases of 460, and out of that 34 from 34 districts and 9 regions. And I'll give you the breakdown, and I'll show you the averages, because the numbers depends on when the labs are ready and when we stop to report them. So that's why a little string. So now we have averages that tells us what is the routine average of new cases. 64% of these new cases were reported from Greater Accra. And as we keep saying, some of these are mainly institutional outbreaks, and that we're happy that the Minister for Trade is here to shed more light on that, on how we can also prevent. 36% of them come from the rest of the remaining 8 regions.
Dr. Abuaje has also been speaking about the discharging policy, which has become a major source of concern for Ghanaians following the review.
You can see that we have them by number. Ahafo has only one discharge, but we are hoping that by the end of the week, most of them would have crossed the 14-day threshold, and most of them would have discharged. And it goes on. You can see Ashanti has about 1,995 cases discharged. Greater Accra has 6,696 discharges, coming up to the 11,000 discharges. So these are the regional breakdown. Upper East is a lot of institutional outbreaks there, and so we are hoping that within a very short time they all move into recovery, and the number of recoveries will significantly show up. Next slide. Of late, we've had the issue of the deaths. So we are looking at the weeks. You know, in epidemiology, this is, the year is divided into weeks. We had our first case or first death on the week 12 of the year. And you can see that the orange color is deaths from Ashanti, blue is Greater Accra, and others. So the significant majority of the deaths come from Greater Accra and Ashanti. That's why the map is targeted in that way. You could see that we've had some spikes on week 22 and week 23. By week 24 and 25, which is the week we are in now, the number of deaths has remained roughly about 3 in a week. So that's how it is. So if you see the uploading of 15 or 10 cases, it's not because they just happened that week or that day. These are some of the after the review. So after the review and looking at the date of death, this is the presentation that it shows. So we saw a little spike in week 22, and now there's been a decline. And we hope that we are able to, with the improvement in the case management and expansion of beds and decongestion of our facilities, we should expect further improvement. Now, we must also add that of the cases who are critical, majority recover. We've had about 36, there's a facility that has received 36 people in the ICU, and only 3 had died. The rest of the 33 had actually recovered and gone home. So critical doesn't mean death. But if you look at the next slide, which is very important, you could see this is the time of death from that time of admission. That's more than 50–60% of all the deaths occur within 48 hours of admission. And these are the people who report to the facility very, very late.
One of the things you don't want to do is to report to the facility late. Now, let's take a look at where these new cases are coming from. Dr. Patrick Abuaje says the workplace is becoming a notorious hotspot for infections. He says some media houses and mining companies are seeing more of these cases.
Yes, I think it's a great worry, as has been said, and most of our current cases have come from that area, and that's why we've been working hard to ensure that these things are applied. I may not be able to give you the total numbers because some are small. They are quite a lot. We have them at mines. We've got some oil and gas companies that have been affected. We've got some other areas of some government agencies have also been had fallen to some of these things. And even some media houses has also had such outbreaks. And so, but the most important thing is how do we apply some of these protocols to ensure that, because you see, moving from your house into that area definitely means that it poses a threat, because it's like you may go to a place where you have about 200 people working. That's in a sense a crowd, but it's the way you organize yourself in such a way that you apply the social distancing and avoiding grouping, as the minister has outlined, will help us to reduce these things. And so if an organization is deemed at a high risk, it could be added. But now why you do that, if you have an organization request that I think I want my people tested, we come in to do a risk assessment. Have you had a case? We had 1 or 2 cases. Where do they sit? Who do they enjoy? Then that's how we do the contact tracing. So it's done within that. But to come out and say, I have an 18,000 employees, please, we feel at risk, test all of them, it's really not going to be something. So what we do now is that once you make a request, because there's a perceived risk, we come with you and assess the risk. And then based on the principles, identify those to be tested, those to be isolated, and we'll do that according to the science, and not just any 10,000 people, which creates congestion for the system. So just random routine requests will not be what you're talking about.
Dr. Patrick Abuaje, the Trade Minister Alan Chemating outlined measures to reduce the spread at workplaces, including steps they're taking to enforce compliance.
With the pandemic, it is absolutely critical that all industrial establishments ensure that they have these PPEs for their workers. And then also the replacement of sturdy gear which are compliant with PPEs. And then checking of temperatures of all employees and customers. Now, these are regular existing protocols that are being observed in many of these industrial establishments. But we are also proposing enhanced restrictions, which we believe are critical if we want to keep our industrial establishments safe. Number 1, stop employees with mild cough or low-grade fever from coming to work and seek medical care. Stagger work schedules by breaking the workforce into shifts. It's not every factory or industrial establishment that currently uses a shift system. But now it is absolutely critical that you find one way or the other to shift your workers around. Then limit in-house meetings as much as possible and use online conference platforms. If unavoidable, sitting arrangements should follow social distance protocols. If you don't have a meeting room or a conference room that is large enough to contain all your workers, then obviously it means that online meetings would probably be the best way out. And then employers should allow staff to work virtually if possible. Obviously, with most industrial establishments, you need to be on the shop floor. But particularly for administrative staff, it should be possible for you to have them work virtually. And then factories, enterprises with more than 29 employees are required to provide a registered nurse on site. If our factories and our industries are not practicing these measures, they are required to practice these measures now. And that is the important message that we are carrying across today. And we want our factories also to implement an anti-stigma policy. No employee should be discriminated against, stigmatized, or be sacked because they have tested positive to the COVID-19 pandemic or infection. Employers must engage the services of experts to provide psychological and emotional support for those who are infected. and also for their families. And then employers must also ensure that the workplace confidentiality for employees is strictly observed. You don't want to destabilize your own organization because one person has become infected. And we want our industries and factories also to carry out periodic fumigation of premises and their machines and equipment. And industries and factories with more than 29 employees must dedicate at least one room within the factory premises as a holding room to immediately house or quarantine anyone who is suspected to be showing symptoms and signs of infection, and be isolated from others while making arrangements for the evacuation of the infected person.
Alan Chematin there speaking earlier at the press conference. We'll take a break here on the polls. When we return, the Supreme Court finally settles the long-standing debate over the usage of the existing voter's ID card as identification to register for the new voter roll. But it appears the matter still holds some confusion for some people. We'll be pursuing clarity today here on the polls. When I return on the break, a private legal practitioner, Samson Ladi Ayenene, will be joining me. We'll also be hearing from Deputy Attorney General Godfrey Yeboah-Dame. We'll get some clarity on this. Do stay with us here on the polls. Welcome back to the show and many thanks for staying with us. Now, the Supreme Court has, in a unanimous decision, ruled that the Electoral Commission has the power to compile a new register. Private citizen Mark Techi-Benson and the opposition NDC filed the case in court asking that it stops the EC from compiling the register or allow the use of birth certificate and the existing voter's ID card by prospective voters as proofs of identification. The Commission, in its legal argument, said the existing voter register, which was compiled in 2012 and revised since by limited exercises, has been held by the Apex Court as not reasonably credible. Deputy Attorney General Godfrey Yeboah-Dame urged the courts not to impede the EC's quest to obey the law. We're joined by lawyer Samson Ladi Ayenene for more on this perspective to this particular ruling. We also hear from Godfrey Yeboah-Dame as well. Samson, so let's break it down as far as what this ruling means. I've seen a lot of conversations going on, especially even on social media, where people are saying they've allowed the existing voter's ID card to be used as identification, etc. Help us. It looks like you are muted, Samson.
I did that earlier.
I know. Okay.
So Gipsy, there's no need belaboring any points. And the Supreme Court's decision today, simply put, is that the Electoral Commission should go ahead with its planned voter registration exercise pursuant to the CI that Parliament has endorsed. It should go ahead, and I think the other aspects that people are bringing unnecessary debates into the judgment is whether or not existing voter ID cards can be used as source documents for the registration. The answer is in the negative, no. Now, as the discussion we had, back end, if you look at what the NDC asked for in the court, just look at two of the most important things they asked of the court and ask yourself whether those two important reliefs were granted or they were dismissed, denied, or refused.
Okay.
Once you answer that those reliefs were not granted, but they were dismissed, denied, or refused, therein is your answer and the summary of all this needless controversy. And the summary is that Electoral Commission is to go ahead with its registration exercise using the CI that has just been passed in Parliament.
Okay, Samson, just to interrupt you briefly, I will read the reliefs, the 4 and 5, if that helps, right? So the 4 says, a declaration that upon a true and proper interpretation of provisions of the Constitution, particularly Article 42 of the Constitution, all existing voter identification cards duly issued by the second defendant to registered voters are valid for purposes of identifying such persons in the exercise of the right to vote. So that's the number 4, the 4th relief sought by the NDC. The 5th is a declaration that upon a true and proper interpretation of the Constitution, specifically Article 42 and the second defendant's purported amendment of Regulation 1, Sub-Regulation 3, it goes on and on and on, through the Public Elections Registration Regulation 2020 to exclude existing voter identification cards as proof of identification to enable a person apply for registration as a voter is unconstitutional. So they want it to be declared unconstitutional, null and void, and of no effect whatsoever, just to help those who haven't seen it.
Right. So you see, the NDC was asked to choose certain reliefs, and one of the reliefs it withdrew was that the Electoral Commission does not have power to compile a voters register more than once, and that once it had compiled one some years ago, that's what has to be used. It withdrew that one. Another person sued. That person who sued brought this relief back. That one too has been denied. Now, the court granted something to the NDC, and I think that is the confusion. What it granted was the NDC's first alternative relief, and which relief is that a declaration that upon a true and proper interpretation of the provisions of the Constitution, specifically Article 51, read conjunctly with Article 42 of the Constitution, the power of the second defendant to compile and review voters' register must be exercised subject to respect for and the protection of the rights of to vote. And the court said yes, that's correct. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean the existing voters' register should be used. So if you skip that one, and then you got to their relief 4, which I asked you to read, and you did. In that relief 4, they were asking that if the EC is doing what it has to do, it must not do and exclude the existing voter identification cards from the documents required as proof of identification. That's what they said. And this one, the court denied it. The court said, we can't grant you that because it's not made out. And then the 8th relief was for the court to order the EC to include all existing voter identification cards duly issued by the EC as one of the documents serving as proof of identification for registration, for registration of a voter for the purposes of public elections. That one too, the court refused it.
Okay.
So bottom line, let's not waste anybody's time. Bottom line, the court says, Electoral Commission, you had planned to do a voters register process. Please go ahead and do the voter registration exercise. Use the CI, constitutional instrument, which Parliament just passed, to do it. What does that CI say? It says you must use your Ghana card, you must use a passport or you must have a guarantor. Simply, this is what it is. So the EC is going to go ahead in the manner that it planned, using the CI that it got Parliament to pass. End of story.
I'll come to you. I want you to listen to the Deputy Attorney General, Godfrey Adame, who we've been speaking to. And there have been a lot of responses since the Supreme Court's ruling, including the General Secretary of the NDC, Johnson Asiedu-Nketia, who has also made some comments. Godfrey Adame has described those comments as misleading. He's also adding that the NDC has been badly bruised and must face the music and stop misleading the public. He asked that no relief of the party was granted by the Apex Court and wondering why, in his words, the NDC is jubilating. Let's listen to Mr. Adame, and then something I'd like to take your thoughts after you've heard him.
The last thing that the court is very good. It protects the rights of the Ghanaian to in the sense that it shows that clearly it is intended to ensure that only Ghanaians who are qualified to vote, they register to vote.
In terms of the ratio of the court, it affirmed the independence of the EC once it's not acting contrary to law, and again gave orders as to compiling the register in accordance with CI 126. I'm sure you have seen what the NDC's General Secretary has been saying. Are you surprised with the interpretation that has been put on the decision of the court, and what is the AG's position on the decision of the court?
I'm totally amazed at the ridiculous interpretation that has been played on the court ruling by the NDC, especially the NDC General Secretary. Clearly, it's only a person who perhaps did not have an understanding of what the court said today who reached such a conclusion. It is quite clear. They have the ruling of the court before, and you have to just match it against the specific reliefs that were sought by the NDC. And you see that clearly in terms of the substantive reliefs, they were all dismissed. The substantive reliefs were relief 4, which was a declaration that upon a true and proper interpretation of the provisions of the Constitution, as well as Article 42 of the Constitution, all existing voter ID cards to be issued by the second defendant of the Electoral Commission to registered voters are valid. That's the NDC's claim. Now, what did the court say? The court stated this is the Constitution. The two reliefs did not add anything at all to the NDC case at all. They were a clear statement of what the Constitution has stated. Because if you seek a relief that a declaration of free appointed to the Constitution, specifically Article 51, read concurrently with Article 42 of the Constitution, the power of the second defendant to compile and review the voters' register must be subject to respect for the right to vote. What have we sought? Nothing at all. We are only stating what the Constitution impliedly and explicitly states. That indeed the right to vote must be respected. Yes, the policy is granted. So what? It's empty, it's nothing. Then you go to the other relief that was granted. The declaration of the true and proper interpretation of the provisions of the Constitution, particularly Article 42, upon registration of and issuance of voter identification card to a person, that person has an accrued right to vote, which cannot be divested in an arbitrary or capricious manner. Again, that's what the Constitution implies and expects. And what did the court say? Relief 3, So the court stated that relief 3, the relief is granted subject to the voter registration card issued to an eligible voter under the prevailing constitutional instrument CI 126. So it says clearly that yes, we even agree with your contentions, which is, as I indicated, what the Constitution expects.
I beg your pardon, Godfrey Adame, the Deputy Attorney General. We'll be hearing more of his clearer conversation in our next bulletin. But he's also been adding that the NDC shot itself in the foot by going to court in the first place with the disenfranchisement claims. He insists it was not backed by any research, evidence, documents or data. And he says they came to the court empty-handed.
To the court, do you think what the court has concluded, that indeed looking back at the brief that they had intended to submit, the court would have determined differently if it had allowed that amicus to go in?
Oh, definitely not. I mean, I took a very serious look at the amicus brief because indeed I realized that they are sought to attack the submission that I had found. And so indeed, when the lawyer got up in court to say that he had not read the submissions, the first point I made was to point out to the court that he was not being candid to the court. So first of all, you find a person who is a party to the case coming into by way of a third-party intervention who is not even candid to the court. I think that that's very deplorable. So, and then you will see that in his submissions, virtually, what was he bringing? Nothing at all, but just the same as the submissions that have been filed by the NDC and Intechibasi. So really all he was seeking to do is to make multiplicity of arguments in respect to the same issue, and that is nothing new. Even if you look at the value of the amicus brief, I made the point that there are only two cases that were cited in the amicus brief. It's a common law tradition, it's a tradition that thrives on the passage of statutes and decisions made by superior courts of jurisdiction. Indeed, there's specific subject matter in this one. There are many cases that could be referred to.
By the Supreme Court.
No, the Supreme Court under Article 129 of the Constitution. No, has the power to exercise all powers vested in any court at all. We call it the residual power of the Supreme Court. They can exercise all powers that are lawfully vested in any court or tribunal in the country. So the Supreme Court, in exercise of the powers conferred on it by the Constitution, Article 129, has made its consequential on this. And all courts are supposed to comply. I think the essence is quite clear that there ought to be order in the administration of justice. There cannot be a situation where the Supreme Court has taken its time to adjudicate on this matter, made orders which are binding on the NDC and all citizens, and then another citizen will be prosecuting another matter in the court. So for the sake of ensuring order and an efficient administration of justice, the Supreme Court has exercised its powers in Article 129 and made its orders, and all courts will be required to comply.
Well, one thing that came up in the course of this proceeding has to do with the amicus application. You had argued that
So that's Godfrey Dame there speaking to Joseph Akable. Like I said, we'll bring you a longer version of that information or that interview, I beg your pardon, in which it's a bit clearer. So sincere apologies for that sound there. But I'm being joined by NDC's, pro-NDC think tank, I should say, ASEPA. Mensa Thompson is head of that organization. He and some other civil society groups had wanted to join the NDC's case but were disallowed. Let's get him right now and his thoughts on the decision taken by the Supreme Court. Mr. Thompson, I see you moving your camera around a bit. Can you hear me?
Is it okay?
Yes, it is okay. And if we can get some stability in the sound in your background, that will help us a lot.
Sure, I'm working on that.
All right. So first of all, I want to take your initial thoughts on this decision. You've been working very hard to get it the other way. It turned the other way. That's not in your favor.
Well, I think the ruling of the court as it stands is a bit confusing, and I would ask the applicant in this particular matter to file another process at the Supreme Court for further interpretation of the ruling, because as I speak, it's a bit confusing if you read the judgment, and it is easy for both parties to claim victory, as we are seeing right now. And depending on how you read the ruling and how you combine it with the constitutional provision and how you juxtapose it with the ruling of the court in the Abu Ramadan case, which the court had affirmed in this instance, also makes it a bit more confusing, So what else can we do than to file a process at the Supreme Court for the judges who the law is in their bosom to give a clearer interpretation of their ruling to the minds of the ordinary Ghanaian? Because as we speak, for me, it's a no victory for anyone. So
hang on. I just spoken to Samson Ladia, who gives us some explanation. And from what he says, if you look at the reliefs that the NDC, for example, sought, the 4, 5, and I think Samson added 8. If you look at the reliefs and the fact that those reliefs were dismissed, the reliefs I've read it already. If they were dismissed, then it's obviously what you wanted or what the NDC wanted has been dismissed. And so it didn't go in your favor. Are you contesting that?
No. The Supreme Court reiterated in the judgment that one, they have granted the relief of the use of the old voters ID card. Of the voters ID card, which has been given under CI 126. As we speak, there's no voters register that has been given, under CI 126.
Okay, I don't have that part of the judgment, but what I do have, yes, which I read
that is under the relief 3. Look at the relief 3 in the first consolidated case between the NDC and then the Attorney General and the Electoral Commission. You will see that relief 3 is said relief 3 granted, and it talks about the use of the existing voters ID card that has been given under CI 126.
Okay, let me just try and read the relief 3. I just want us to be able to carry our viewers along so that there is no confusion here. Relief 3 is the NDC is asking for a declaration that all existing voter ID cards are valid for identifying persons in the exercise of the right to vote. The court's decision on that is denied.
The court decision
on that is relief 3. Okay, right. Hang on. Sorry, I went to relief 4. Okay, so relief 3, the court's decision is yes, but subject to a voter ID issued under the CI 126. Wait, I'm then referring to a CI, a new voter ID that the EC will now have to register people for.
Yeah, so as we speak, no voters ID card has been given under CI 126. But in the same ruling, the Supreme Court is also affirming its ruling in the Abu Ramadan case, Abu Ramadan 2. And if you know the decision of the court in Abu Ramadan 2, what the court was saying, the court gave 4 main documents as a means or legitimate means of identification for registration. And that were the voter's ID card, the passport, the driver's license, and the birth certificate. And so if you take this ruling vis-a-vis the court's decision in Abu Ramadan, which it has emphasized in this particular ruling and upheld in this same ruling, then it creates a bit of confusion there. And that's why I'm saying that the applicant should go back to the court for the court to give a clearer interpretation of its own judgment. Otherwise, the confusion lingers on, and I don't see why anybody will be claiming victory.
Okay, so if you talk about confusion, and I just want to bring your attention once again to the fact that it's not just relief 4. So you have relief 4 denied, relief 5 denied, move to relief 8 denied, and it's all talking about how the NDC wanted the old voters register or the existing voters register to be part of forms of identification. 3 different reliefs denied, directing to the same thing. Does that not give you the indication that there is absolutely no confusion in the mind of the Supreme Court judges?
There is so much confusion in this particular ruling, and if you read the ruling in its entirety and the declarations that the court has made, there's a lot of confusion out there. There's a lot of confusion in this particular ruling, and I don't think that there's anybody better placed to give or interpret this ruling other than the Supreme Court itself. Okay,
so let me just draw your attention also to something that you wrote when the Supreme Court finally ruled. You say that the Supreme Court, and this is a statement you put out there, the Supreme Court has just ruled for the inclusion of the old voters ID card as a requirement in the compilation of a new register. Now it is clear why the judges threw our amicus away yesterday. The court didn't want we, the CSO, to take the credit for forcing the judges to do the right thing. When you said this, was there confusion in your mind, or were you deliberately creating misinformation?
Read the ruling out there. What I picked up was that the court has granted the use of the old voters ID card, and I still stand by that decision. Okay. And that is why I'm saying that subsequently I have heard a number of legal experts also making different interpretations of this particular ruling. And that has created a number of confusions out there. And so if you look at the conversation out there, different legal opinions out there, different legal, understanding of the ruling of the court.
And so your decision is to go back to the court. How soon are you doing that?
I'm not an applicant in the case. We are not an applicant in this particular case. In fact, our amicus was rejected. If our amicus were to be having accepted yesterday, of course, would have given us some locus to go back to the court. Okay. But it is the onus lies on the applicants now to go back to the court and seek further interpretation of this particular ruling.
Mr. Thompson, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. And I wish you all the best in your endeavors. Mr. Thompson is head of ASEPA, is a think tank. They tried to join in this particular case, but they weren't allowed to. He says there's a lot of confusion. Let's hear from the Minister of Parliamentary Affairs, Oseiche Mensah-Bonsu, who is also majority leader. He's cautioning critics who he says are misinterpreting the judgment by the Supreme Court in the NDC versus EC case to be careful. He says that according to him, the ruling by the Apex Court of the land is clear, and it is in favor of the Attorney General and the EC as stipulated in CI 126 passed by the Parliament.
What I'm seeing here is what I believe is the truth and is certified from the Supreme Court. It says, with particular reference to the second relief that they sought in respect of including the old voters' ID card, the Supreme Court was unanimous in this, that the relief is granted subject to the fact that all eligible voters must make themselves available for registration as directed by the Electoral Commission pursuant to Public Elections Registration of Voters Amendment Regulations 2020 CI 126. As simple as that. What is contained in CI 126 is that they are saying they are going to rely on the Ghana cards, that is the Identification Authority cards, and passports. That's what is contained in that. So if the court issues this ruling that it should be pursuant to CI 126, who in his wildest imagination will go outside this ruling to say that, the old voters' ID card has been included? The facts speak for itself. And I cannot add anything or subtract anything from this. God bless us all. What I'm seeing here is what
are your thoughts? Drop it on our social media platforms, and at a time where we can do that in the segment, we will share that with the rest of the world. Now, the wave swept through Ghana's capital, sending shivers down many spines. Last night's earth tremors, measuring 4.0 on the Richter scale, has raised questions about more shocks in Ghana. An expert in disaster risk management, Dr. Ishmael Norman, joins me on the line to share some knowledge on this with us. But first, here are a few experiences shared today on the Super Morning Show.
We thank God that yesterday it was scary. So the first one we me up, then the second one is very serious. Then the third one comes, then we say Alhamdulillah.
Last night I was actually up late writing an online exam, and then suddenly I felt some vibrations in the building. I actually live in a storage building, but I'm on the ground floor, so the first one was quite mild, and so I ignored. And a few minutes later, then a heavy one occurred. Well, to be honest, no, I didn't know what to do. Yes, because when the second vibration occurred, I was actually wondering, okay, so if this was an earthquake, what am I going to do?
Yesterday, what I experienced yesterday, my brother, you can't imagine. Around, I think, 11 p.m. Then I was on the bed, and I heard a vibration on my body.
Wow.
So I just get up. I said, what is it? Then second time the thing was happening again. So I have to call my neighbor who said, Yima, I'm saying, I'm Robert Diabahao.
Oh, Charlie.
So I just take my knife and just go out and say, hey, who is there? Then the thing happened again. So it's like now I have to play, just come to the room and take my anointing oil and be playing, God, what is this, what is that?
My fear is that, it's just so sad you should run out. It's as if when you run out, nothing will happen outside. I really feel that it's riskier going outside when it's happening because you don't know where the thing is passing and what will happen outside.
I understand you.
Yeah,
I understand you.
We need a lot of education and.
I was so scared. It was around 10:50, 11 p.m. and my door just shook, plus my bed. So I was like, hey, what is happening? So I got up and sat on the bed for a moment, and it happened again. So I have to get up, and I was just standing in the room doing nothing. I was just, am I dreaming or? And then I stood for some time, and I lie on the bed again, but it didn't happen again.
Well, many went on social media also to share their experiences. But speaking on News Desk, the experts I'm about to talk to, Dr. Ishmael Norman, urged Ghanaians to build in high areas as he hints of bigger tremors in the future. He joins me via Zoom right now so we can have a chat. Dr. Norman, thank you for your time this afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you? I'm
blessed. I hope you are too. So, I don't know how you felt it yourself yesterday. Did you? Because I didn't.
I actually am not. I don't have irrational fear for a number of dangers like earthquake, because I do understand why we have them, and I do know how to prepare myself. And it begins from your house. If the house is well built to withstand earthquake, tremor or earthquake itself, then your fear reduces because, knowledge builds confidence, So I wasn't particularly afraid. And in my house has various zones where you can actually build into the house already, where you can go and seek shelter.
Okay, so from the way you describe it, it's as if there was a deliberate attempt to create such shock-absorbing areas in your house. I mean, this was put in the plan of your house?
Because of what I do, and I've been at this for a while. So when we're designing the house, maybe a decade and a half ago, we put in all these measures and sunk extra pillars with extra springs to make the house a bit more resistant and resilient to earthquake.
Okay,
because I live in the Kokrobite area and right on the coast, so the ocean cannot be like a buffer, or in fact, sometimes the ocean can increase the ground acceleration. So when you are in such places like all the people in Accra, all the houses should have taken into consideration some of these modalities when they were building them.
I see. You're warning of more of such tremors. Why?
Well, I think all the experts, all the seismologists in this country and elsewhere have said, even though the ground acceleration, the tectonic plate in Africa doesn't move beyond 10% over a 50-year period, we have already gone beyond that 50-year period, and therefore the likelihood, the probability that there will be a major earthquake in Ghana, according to the seismologists, is very high. And so on the basis of that, nobody can predict when it's going to happen. But when you have back-to-back tremors like that, you have to be a bit concerned about it, because it's as if nature is preparing itself to give us a big show.
Is there any scientific evidence that you can add to this to make it more, a stronger point for us, you think?
Nobody can predict earthquake. As for that, everybody knows that. They're working towards giving a warning, early warning, like 15 minutes, 10 minutes before it happens, but nobody can actually predict it. So there is no scientific evidence. However, there is anecdotal evidence that oftentimes when you have these kinds of events happening, back to back and the tremors continue, then you have to basically prepare yourself for the eventuality, but they don't know when the eventuality will happen.
Based on that, finally, Doc, what sort of education do you think we need, or what do you think we need as a country from your experience, since you're calling this warning?
I think have to be a little bit more circumspect in downloading warning as to what to do in an earthquake. For example, some of it said go under a table. If you live in a wooden structure, you can go under a table. But when you live in concrete block house, you cannot go under a table, because if a block falls on that table, it will collapse on you. So for me, I would say some of the areas of the house that are often reinforced are those that have concrete casting institute. The type of block infill with pre-stressed beam houses that are found in most of our high rises are not really good for a place like this, but who am I to say? The engineers approve it, and so we are using it. And because it's cheaper, people are using it. So if you feel that there's a tremor or an earthquake coming, and if you have a place that is already concrete and a floor, it cast institute, you can be under it. Going outside sometimes is helpful, but electric lines can also fall on you. Trees can fall on you, buildings can fall on you. So the best place is to stay in a more fortified area of your house. Oftentimes, under staircases are very good places to take refuge in a quickie, because staircases are really well reinforced if they are built well. The problem is that our houses are built by artisan class that really don't understand the force of gravity and concrete and all of that. So it's a dicey issue, but there are many, many homes in Ghana where people can be well protected in an event of an earthquake.
Well, Doc, we'll say a very big thanks. I don't know what lessons there are to pick from these, and I don't know whether we already have, but thank you very much. Dr. Ishmael Norman is a disaster risk management expert. Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia says government is in the process of transferring manual data of the births and deaths registry into electronic form as part of measures to digitize the country's births and deaths data. Once completed, the database will be integrated with that of the National Identification Authority database to ensure that a national ID is generated for every Ghanaian from birth. Dr. Bawumia said this when he paid a working visit to the births and deaths registry here in Accra on Thursday.
We have begun the process over the last few years of digitizing the operations of the births and deaths registry. And so far, they are moving all of the data that they have manually, the paper data, into electronic form. So far, we've done almost 80% of movement of all their records into electronic form. And by next year, God willing, we would finish the entire record. And, you know, so there's a digitization process taking place. The business processes have also been automated. And just 2 weeks ago, the hardworking Minister for Local Government, Hajia Alima Mahama, came to Cabinet and got approval for a new births and deaths registry bill that will be submitted to Parliament, and we will therefore see a decentralization of the operations of the births and deaths registry. So that will really help as we digitize and decentralize. Once we move into next year, we are going to be integrating the births and deaths registry, the database, with the National Identification Database, so that once you are born, you get your births and deaths registered online from wherever you are in the country. And NIA should also be able to issue you a national identification number at the time of birth. So you will not have your card then, but a few years later, you'll have it. But your national ID number, your births and deaths register will also flow through to your SNIT, to your NHIA, and all of that. So we are doing that whole integration next year.
Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia speaking to other journalists and Latif Idrisu. Now, wearing a face mask to cover your nose and mouth is one of the measures that experts say could help cut the spread of coronavirus. But for some people, the face mask is unnecessary as long as they have hair in their nostrils. In today's episode of the Joy Project to combat fake news, we'll bring you the story of the people in the community of Aveno refusing to wear face masks because of the nostrils, the hair in their nostrils. JoyNews' Henry Kwesibedu reports, read to you.
Wearing a clean face mask is a global public health recommendation to halt the spread of coronavirus. This, according to health experts, stops the transfer of fluids from one person to another, breaking the chain of the virus. At Aveno, I meet 26-year-old Kofi. He tells me he has stitched the face mask.
Like, maybe nose mask, me no like what I say. Me pay nose mask. Nah, I know they like. Me pay ankasa. And I mean she been suda.
Kofi says the hair in his nostrils makes him immune to the coronavirus.
Like you like
God created a nasal passage and its hair such that it protects us from all impurities, including viruses.
Nose masks, I know they like. Yeah, I know they like.
He adds that the more the hair in the nasal cavity, the lower your risk of acquiring the virus.
Is that true? Yeah, it's true.
I have lots of hair in my nostrils and don't believe the coronavirus can enter my body through my nostrils. The reason I don't wear a face mask.
I know they like, yeah. Yeah, I believe. That's my belief. Yeah, Mijidi says, like, our purpose, ain't in Yankopon boy, no. Or boy, send like a cover free and Yaman Kitty, like, you who ever call him, the way I say, you know, me, I believe with that. Me believe, no. Yeah,
those with lots of hairs in their nostrils are immune.
Yeah, onya virus ni bi.
The marks in the
there be marks in the nyande amehye kra. There be me ho kra hira me. Ah me hu se obi hye kra na me ho tete me. Yeah.
Kofi is not the only one who holds this view. In this video footage, a passenger on board a trotro makes a similar claim. But is hair in the nose enough to ward off the virus? We have been speaking to Professor Alfred Yosin of the University of Ghana Medical School.
The hair in the nostril passage, the nostril hair, is protective and it has natural benefit for the human being. It filters the air that goes into and warms the air as well, so it has biological functions. However, when you are dealing with tiny, minute germ like a virus, which you cannot see and it's only seen under a special microscope, it is certainly not true that the hair in your nostrils can prevent the viruses getting into the body.
Stay safe and help halt the spread of coronavirus. Henry Kwesibedu's report for JoyNews.
And on the global front, the World Health Organization is warning that hospitals are facing a shortage in oxygen concentrators needed to support the breathing of COVID-19 patients who are suffering from respiratory distress. According to the WHO, 1 million new cases of coronavirus are confirmed worldwide each day. Director General Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus says demand is currently outstripping supply.
Almost 4 million cases have been reported. We expect to reach a total of 10 million cases within the next week. This is a sober reminder that even as we continue research into vaccines and therapeutics, We have an urgent responsibility to do everything we can with the tools we have now to suppress transmission and save lives. One of the most effective ways of saving lives is providing oxygen to patients who need it. Several news reports published today have highlighted the vital role of oxygen in treating patients with severe and critical COVID-19. This has been an area of intense focus for WHO since the beginning of the pandemic. Patients with severe and critical COVID-19 cannot get enough oxygen into their blood by breathing normally. They need higher concentrations of oxygen and support to get it into their lungs. Left untreated, severe COVID-19 deprives cells and organs of the oxygen they need, which ultimately leads to organ failure and death. Medical oxygen is produced using oxygen concentrators, which extract and purify oxygen from the air. WHO estimates that at the current rate of about 1 million new cases a week, the world needs about 620,000 cubic meters of oxygen a day, which is about 88,000 large cylinders. However, many countries are now experiencing difficulties in obtaining oxygen concentrators. 80% of the market is owned by just few companies, and demand is currently outstripping supply. WHO and the UN partners are working with manufacturers across the world through a variety of private sector networks to buy oxygen concentrators for countries that need them most. Ongoing talks with suppliers in recent weeks have enabled WHO to buy 14,000 oxygen concentrators, which will be sent to 120 countries in the coming weeks. WHO has identified a further 170,000 concentrators that can be available over the next 6 months with a value of $100 million. In addition, WHO has bought 9,800 pulse oximeters, a simple device used to monitor oxygen in patients' blood, which are being prepared for shipment. Another challenge is that many patients with critical disease need a higher flow rate of oxygen than is produced by most commercially available concentrators. To address this challenge, WHO is supporting several countries to buy equipment that will enable them to generate their own concentrated oxygen in larger amounts. This is a sustainable solution for COVID-19 and beyond.
And as we continue, we explore more of how we can deal with this coronavirus sustainably. I'll take a very quick break. When I return, have a conversation with Tobinco Pharmaceutical Limited. Do stay with us. You're welcome back to the show. Now, since the outbreak of COVID-19 in Ghana, many organizations and individuals have gone out of their way to support the fight in various ways, from funding the production of PPEs and hand sanitizers to the production of critical drugs. On the post today, we put a spotlight on contributions of these entities. Today, we're focusing on Tobinco Pharmaceuticals. It's a company that's first to begin the production of hydroxychloroquine to help treat patients after the outbreak. Joining me in studio is Christopher Mensah, Deputy Managing Director for Tobinco Pharmaceuticals Marketing. Mr. Mensah, you're welcome to the show. So, hydroxychloroquine is one of the things that you started production. You're the first company to start production in Ghana?
Exactly.
See, how difficult a road is it to take?
Right, thank you very much. So, hydroxychloroquine, we produce it as a generic medicine.
Okay.
To say that there's an innovator, somebody had it already out there somewhere in France.
Okay.
And then we decided that, in Ghana, let's do something to support. So we looked at the product, looked at the product parameters, and then decided to manufacture same.
Okay.
It's not that easy, especially for a product whose formulation you require a lot of scientific background to be able to do. Because when it comes to pharmaceuticals, it's not just photocopy, copy and paste, because mixing of medicines, A plus B is not the same as B plus A when it comes to formulation. So it's been a long fight, but fortunately, with the support of various stakeholders, we succeeded, and here we are with it.
Okay, does it give us as Ghanaians, seeing that Tobinco is a Ghanaian company, does it give us any special edge over other countries which have not been able to produce some of these drugs needed for coronavirus?
Right, yes, so it does, especially for us in Africa. You realize that as corona started hitting globally, various countries were calling upon their various manufacturing facilities to boost up capacity. And for us, the government called all pharmaceutical industry players to do something to support. So the sanitizers came in, and along the line, this product also came in. For now, as we speak, we are the first company in West Africa to have produced it. So for as long as this drug remains relevant or critical in the treatment of COVID patients in Ghana and elsewhere, we have the chance to export it to these sub-regional countries around us.
So talking about exports, what strides have you made in that regard? Where are we now?
Right, so Entrance Pharmaceuticals, which is the manufacturing subsidiary of Tobinco, is actually the biggest pharma manufacturing facility in West Africa. And already we have, we've made inroads into a number of African countries, and we are still growing. So these countries that we have partnerships with already, they ask us, can we support them? Can we give them and all that? So as we speak, we have lots of orders from various countries around us already. Only that we need to focus on our country and support our country first before we can look at exporting some to them.
Can't you support other, like NS Chemists, like all the other organizations to come together as a bigger consortium that can then produce this? And if you can, you have to export. So we do that and then we get the money.
Sure. So we have very close working relations as an industry, as the Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Association of Ghana, PMAC. So we deliberate on lots of all these things, and we share knowledge, we share expertise. So definitely they are also coming up.
Okay.
So as and when we get there, but let me quickly say that Entrance has a huge capacity. It was actually set up to manufacture to meet the African needs.
I said that because you indicated that you wanted to, meet the demand in Ghana first.
Yes.
And I'm saying that if there is the demand beyond Ghana and there is the capacity to produce to meet it, why don't we mobilize that capacity to deal with it?
So we have capacity for Ghana and beyond. That's the capacity.
Okay.
But for the first batch that we produced, yes, that was what we were talking about. Immediately, we donated a lot to the Ministry of Health to be able to take care of patients at the treatment centers first, and then for them to have experiential use of the product, even though it is FDA approved, so that we can build some more data locally as we look at the export market.
Interesting. So far, what has the feedback been? I think that's the hydroxychloroquine. Yes. You brought some to show us, right? Yes, okay, so this is how it looks like, and this is Entrance. So you work together with Entrance. Tobinco works together with Entrance to produce.
Our subsidiary.
Okay, so you're leaving this with us, right? So that if we know friends who have coronavirus and they are very sick, we can share with them.
Unfortunately, it's a prescription medicine.
Oh, right.
So
so you can't just walk over the counter
get into a pharmacy and get it over the counter.
So for those of you who are watching, here is it. So this is produced in Ghana.
Exactly.
Okay, this way it should be. So hydroxychloroquine produced in Ghana, and Tobinco Pharmaceuticals is the first to do so. Okay, so you are essentially looking to export, and I'm looking forward to that particular day. But dexamethasone is another drug that has been identified as one of the most effective drugs for very sick people. Is that something you're looking at as well?
Right, thank you. So we have dexamethasone injection already in-house. Okay, it's a tablet form that as and when we get more evidence and solidity that is something that can be useful locally, yes, then we can go into it. But for
at this point, we're not sure.
For the protocols of the treatment protocols of Ghana, that is what we fall on.
Okay.
For now, they have other medicines that they use in place of the dexamethasone to manage that critical end stage. And hydroxychloroquine is still so important in a treatment protocol, especially from the mild to moderate cases. The dexamethasone usually will come to the end stages where the patient's systems are just, it's almost there. It's almost there, you know it. So that's where it comes.
So those of you who are stocking up with dexamethasone, you really don't need to. From what the discussion I'm having. Okay, so we're wrapping up, but I want to find out, for those who are asymptomatic, what kind of, will doctors typically still prescribe hydroxychloroquine?
Yes, thank you very much. So yes, for asymptomatic they do. So they just look at the other comorbid conditions and other presenting conditions the patient has, and then they'll make a right choice for it or otherwise. But
I'm talking about people who are asymptomatic. They show no symptoms at all.
Yes, I'm talking about, yes, it might be asymptomatic as far as COVID is concerned, but it might be having symptoms of cardiac issues and other things, yes. So for asymptomatic, it is still used for hydroxychloroquine. Yeah, it's part of the protocol they use it.
I see. So how has the response been? I was asking you earlier.
Yes.
The feedback.
So the feedback has been great, but unfortunately people want it over the counter. People just want to get to us and just get it. We said no. For as long as it's a prescription medicine, we cannot just give it to you like that until a doctor and a good doctor prescribes it for you. Yes.
What checks are there to ensure that people don't abuse this and just get it over the counter? We know there are several prescription medicines that these days you can get over the counter.
So the FDA has in place a strict system of pharmacovigilance, where from time to time can ask you, let me see, you produce one batch of the product, so let me see how much is left. Okay, if you have consumed this quantity, I want to know where the product went to. So they will trace the distribution, and that will ensure that you are distributing the product right.
That works, that works. Do you have any final words to share with us?
Yes, so we just want to, on behalf of Elder Nana Motobin and the entire Tobinco Group, want to assure us that we have systems in place as a country, and the pharmaceutical industry is also well poised to support in that direction. So they should rest assured, they should stay calm, and they should just trust in what is in the system to manage the condition and the pandemic that we have been faced with.
Okay, we hear you. Let's try and trust the system a bit more. I'm particularly interested in how we're able to send this across the country. I mean, Ghana to the world, hopefully, and we'll get there. Christopher Mensah is Deputy Managing Director for Marketing, Tobinco Pharmaceuticals Limited. They are the first country to produce in West Africa, you say, right? To produce hydroxychloroquine, one of the medicines used in the treatment of coronavirus. Thank you very much for coming once again. Well, today the Trade Minister, Alan Chamating, also gave some updates on the production of PPEs by local companies for onward free distribution.
So currently, we have 5 large-scale Tier 1 producers. We have 23 Tier 2 producers, and then we have 31 Tier 3 producers. And we'll continue developing the capacity of these local producers. And obviously, we want to fully integrate the production of these PPEs in terms of the use of local fabric. And so we have 2 major, 3 large-scale fabric producers, those who produce the fabric, or what we call material in Ghana, or textile. And these are producing fabric for the garment producers. So in terms of production volume, so far, to date, we've produced 6.2 million face masks. Our target is by the end of July this year, we would have produced 14.6 million face masks just from these local producers. And then we produced 90,000 hospital gowns, 90,000 head covers which go with the gowns, and then 60,000 medical scrubs. You see the ones that the nurses wear top and bottom. Now, the average daily production of these face masks, that's combining the 3 levels of producers, is about 250,000 face masks a day. You know, our tailors and seamstresses, maybe ideally they could only sew 5 or 10 at most a day. But now with the increase in production, we're hitting about 250,000 face masks a day. And then the total fabric use is about 1.240 million yards of fabric. So
Minister Alan Chemating there. Now, weeks after recovering from COVID-19, senior medical doctor in residence in pediatrics at the Bolgatanga Regional Hospital, Dr. Gillian Bugi, has returned to work to a rousing welcome. The senior medical doctor in charge of the neonatal intensive care unit in May this year shared her near-death experience with the disease, which has affected more than 15,000 Ghanaians.
When I started desaturating, I started writing down messages from my family. I started videoing myself because at a point in time I gave up. I knew that I have the COVID, but it was like nobody believed I had the COVID, and anything could happen at any time. So I started writing messages and I started videoing myself, what I was going through, and then in my diary.
If you say anything could happen, you thought you were going to die?
Yes, I actually thought I was going to die. Yeah, that was what was running through. So I would just sit down and then ask myself, so what next? Then I would just say, Lord, may your will be done. That was just what was running through my head. In all, I managed to get all the staffs that attended to me. 33 staffs attended to me in the medical ICU. 33, including nurses and then doctors, 33 staffs. They really fought for me, honestly. At a point in time, I remember one of the doctors telling me, Dr. Bugi, we just do not know what we are treating for now. The disease is new, no cure now, no vaccine. So what we are actually doing is when you show us signs or when you have the symptoms, whatever symptom you have, we try to control it. I spent 8 days in the medical ICU, and then later on, I was moved to fevers unit, where I spent 12 days.
And certainly there is good news on the front line. Staff of the Bolgatanga Regional Hospital, friends and former patients of the senior medical doctor threw her a surprise party on her return to the unit. Komla Adum has the rest of the story.
The scenes at the Bolgatanga Regional Hospital Neonatal Intensive Care Unit mirrored what a victory party after a long battle looks like. A gorgeous welcome back cake with the inscription, "We beat COVID-19." The staff welcomed Dr. Gillian Bugi back to work after her recovery from the disease.
You are always welcome home, welcome home.
The regional hospital, I had a surprise birthday cake, which was brought to me by a midwife, and then the husband, who happens to be a district director. And then we all had to, it was dubbed on it, we beat COVID-19. Yes, and it was quite a joyous moment for me.
A number of her staff and friends assembled to throw up the surprise party to welcome one of their own who had been away for nearly 2 months. Some of her former patients and babies she delivered were not left out.
One other welcome I received, which was very, very delightful to me, was that of the mothers and then the babies. But when they heard of my return back into the region, most of them came back with the babies to welcome me back and then to wish me well.
After her initial welcome at home after being discharged from the Kolebu Teaching Hospital, there was another at the home of her in-laws. She was served mashed yam and 3 eggs, a symbolism of victory. Dr. Gillian Bugi is keeping her advocacy against stigma alive.
After my recovery, my return back to the region was aroused by the regional director of health services. They had a press briefing session, and then I led the regional team of recovered COVID-19 patients and read the statement on their behalf also. It was quite an engaging session, but I took that opportunity to appeal to the general public to desist from stigmatization, since it has a negative consequence on the socioeconomic status of recovered COVID-19 patients. As we all know, stigmatization can lead to social avoidance, denials of healthcare, education, housing, employment, and then physical violence. It can also affect the emotional or mental health of stigmatized groups and the community in which they live as a whole.
She feels well and energized, having no symptoms since her discharge.
Since I was discharged from COVID, yes, so I'm a bit confident that I was treated fully, and then I'm medically fit. Because since I came out, I've never had any signs, no anosmia, I've not coughed, I've not had any bodily pains, no headaches, nothing, and life is just normal for me. I come to work and then carry on with my daily activities. I've not experienced any symptoms so far.
You are always welcome home, welcome home.
She's raring to go, to give of her best to her clients and community. Dr. Boogie is concerned about reports of stigma in some communities following the discharge of recovered persons. She wants people to accept and help these persons properly reintegrate.
COVID-19 is real, so we should all continue to observe all the precautionary measures and then obey the rules so that we can stay alive for Mother Ghana.
For those who still harbor doubts about the reality of a disease, Dr. Boogie says,
and then to all those who really think that COVID-19 is a hoax or does not really exist, should really have a change of mind, because I have actually gone through it, and I don't think anyone would want to go through the kind of experience I actually went through. I wouldn't even wish it for my enemy. So the most important thing is for us to the social distancing, so that we put on our masks when we are in public gatherings, or washing of our hands, so that we don't really catch the COVID.
And there's obviously nothing like having children wish you well. In my next life, I want to be a pediatrician. Congratulations to him, to her, and all other health workers working on the front lines in these crucial times. Now, a health and nutrition officer at UNICEF, Dr. Priscilla Wobil, has said 94% of children aged between 1 and 14 years experience some form of violent discipline. She said out of this figure, 17% receive severe punishment, such as slapping or slapping on the face, head or ears, and beating a child hard repeatedly. Dr. Wabel also said almost 9 out of the 10 children, representing 89%, are psychologically abused at the hands of caregivers.
Speaking at an engagement with traditional and religious leaders on COVID-19 awareness creation and child protection, Dr. Wombel mentioned physical attacks, rape, child marriage, and psychological abuse, among others, as some of the violent discipline children go through in Ghana.
In Ghana, 94% of children aged 1 to 14 years experience some form of violent discipline. Out of this number, 17%, that's about 1 out of every 5 children in Ghana, receive what is termed as severe punishment through hitting, slapping the child on the face, the head, slapping the head or the ears, hitting or beating a child hard and repeatedly. Psychological aggression is also common. Almost 9 out of 10 are psychologically abused at the hands of their caregivers. You may be shouting at them, yelling, screaming at them, as well as calling them offensive names such as dumb or lazy.
Dr. Wobel said rape assessment conducted by UNICEF on violence and abuse at home during COVID-19 in May revealed 32%, mostly adolescents, suffered financial and economic abuse.
There was an assessment conducted by UNICEF in May 2019 looking at violence and then abuse at home. And 32% of those who responded, these were adolescents and young people. They said that they had seen and observed abusive or violent behavior in their families in the past 2 months. This was done in May, so that means between March and April they had observed that, and they said it had been increasing. The forms of abusive behavior they mentioned were financial and economic abuse, meaning that maybe they need money to buy some basic needs and they don't get that.
The acting director, Department of Children, Florence Eyisi-Kote, said there have been increased cases of violence against children per the 2017 assessment carried out by the department.
The most common abuse that we receive the report on is the issue of physical. People beat children, and that is going overboard is the most one. And then sexual abuse. Sexual abuse is very rampant. We have intercepted also incidents of child marriage and female genital mutilation, but they don't come as high as we want the issue of sexual and physical abuse that are reported to children. So those are the issues that really are coming up. And I also want to stress, it's not about the cases that are received, but the cases that are not received and we are hiding them. That's the main thing that we need to do. And that's why we say that if you prevent it from happening, then these cases will not come to us. So we need as parents to be vigilant, and we shouldn't be part of the abuse. Rather should be ones that protect our children from being abused. So we need to work together, ensure there's prevention, because prevention is what we are aiming for. But when the case happens, especially when it's sexual, please report to the police. It shouldn't be settled at home.
Widower of a pregnant woman stabbed to death and his daughter wounded by armed robbers at Ampetia near Kumasi is reluctant to share his experience because it will make no difference, he says. A frustrated pastor, Francis Eduse, argues that previous victims of attacks in the area never had justice as the perpetrators remain untraced. His pregnant wife, Juliana Eduse, died from multiple stabs by 3 armed and masked men who attacked the family at dawn last Saturday. Their 6-year-old daughter is on admission at Komfo-Anokye Teaching Hospital, where she is receiving treatments for stab wounds inflicted on her by the unknown assailant. The tragic incident brings to 4 the number of people, mainly women, who have died under similar circumstances in the area. Pastor Eduse believes that opening up on his wife's death will change nothing. Nana Sensumensa has more in this report.
31-year-old Juliana Eduse, who was 7 months pregnant, gave up the ghost when the armed men reportedly turned the axe on her at their residence at about 1:30 a.m.
So at about 1:30 a.m. on Saturday, family of 3 were fast asleep in this house. The house you see in your screens. All what they heard was a knock on the door. So the man came to check who was knocking at that ungodly hour, only to find out 3 armed robbers. They bounced on him and demanded some cash. The man was reluctant to issue the cash to them. So in the process, they stabbed his 6-year-old daughter here at the abdomen. His pregnant wife also rushed to save the daughter, and the armed robbers also stabbed the pregnant wife at the right side of her neck.
She had attempted to rescue her daughter from the grips of the assailants and paid with her life as the robbers made away with cash of $1,000. Pastor Edusei, who is yet to come to terms with the situation, will not speak on record on a visit to his residence, though he indicates he feels let down by the system. He insists on remaining tight-lipped on the heinous crime because others in similar fashion remain unresolved.
If you said, "Dear Hesitiano," or Castle Tanaha, the idea you knew, and son will be bit me at the being so I had at Tonaso, 20 minutes Tanaha. Tell you whom after your super or a.
So, what this man is saying that he's a resident in this vicinity, and what happened over the weekend has really scared them. And he and his family, they can't even go out at night. So, they are living in fear, obviously. So they want authorities to come to their aid. That's happening here. Let me also speak to one lady here and find out how she's also faring over here about the situation. Ma'am, you're from saying?
Mami Vida.
Mami Vida, what's your name? Okay. Sena, a dear, Sena, who been their boat or Hanum?
In fact, the few home dear, Mintimenda, my 2 free midday and Mokra Mintimenda, Miss Ro. I have who papa.
It's all down here.
I say, I'm a wing check. Mintimenda, die with Miss Ro.
I'm a resident here, she says. Because of what happened over the weekend, I'm really scared. I've moved from my house and now I'm living with a neighbor because I fear the robbers might also attack me. We are pleading with authorities to come to our aid to boost security in this area because we don't feel safe. We are scared. Residents are in a mix of fear and rage as they feel unsafe to continue living in the community. Assembly member for the area, James Safo, blames the heightening insecurity in the area on the poor road network that links the community to Santasi and other communities. He says police night patrols to the area, which has witnessed repeated murder of some women, have ceased as the result of the poor road.
First, Naka patrol team baho. Now, so I'm saying, you can know a different fantastic but you know, quite no. I'm a patrol team also.
At first, the police used to patrol this area to ward off criminals. But because of the poor roads, the police patrol have stopped coming here.
This year, a year of road. Now, so over April, fantastic a year of dust.
Meanwhile, a police station constructed by the people through self-help remains unused. Residents want authorities to act to curb the menace. Nana Asansu Mensah.
Before we go, authorities are hinting that Ghana's borders may be reopened soon because ECOWAS leaders have been meeting to agree on a deal. Well, this is what we know, that it will be a phased approach. The first phase calls internal, consists of reopening domestic airports and lifting restrictions on land transportations within ECOWAS member states on 1st of July. And the latest, that's just next week. So hopefully by next week, according to this deal that ECOWAS leaders have had, we should perhaps see an ease in the restrictions there. And the second phase is based on widening the opening between member states to allow the free movement of goods and people. And the proposed date for that is fortnight of July. That's July 15 at the latest. And finally, we're told, or what we know is that ECOWAS is offering the opening of air and land borders to other countries that do not have very high levels of COVID-19 contamination rate from the second half of July. That's 31st of July 2020 at the latest. Well, this opening, we are told, will be a function of the evolution of the pandemic within the member countries of the ECOWAS and of other countries, and will be the subject of a periodic evaluation. So a very staggered approach, a very staggered way of opening up. Finally, hopefully we'll get there. So those are tentative dates that are available after the ECOWAS had a meeting. ECOWAS leaders had a meeting on the phased reopening of ECOWAS borders. Well, if you have a loved one who is not in this country at the moment, certainly it will be a good news for you. And if you're tired of staying in the country, you certainly find it as a good news. Log on to myjoyonline.com. There's more news there. But let's do this again tomorrow before the week ends finally. My name is Gifty Ando Apia. Have fun.
The Pulse.